Hi everybody, good buddy Kaio here. I'm not really used to this. Sorry for the nervousness. I'm not really sure how to get about this. I mean, it's sort of out of the blue, but I want to at least put what happened out here there. Hetalia fans like myself. I guess I'll just talk, type, or whatever, just to get this through. As much of an interesting experience this was, I'd rather not remember it and continue on with my derp life. Alright, so this happened a while ago. Before school started, that it went down. But I should probably go back into fervor to when it actually first started. It was when Axis Powers Hetalia was in full swing. Second season was still being bounding through the fandom and giving out glorious episodes every Monday. My older sister and I were both involved in the series, which was a rare occasion since she often didn't really share interests with me. Of course, I would force myself to get into whatever she's getting into, just so we could share at least we have a favored reason to hang out. But this was the first time she came into the fandom without me working for it. It was really nice, considering that it was still unknown to our small town. It was even nicer to have at least someone to relate to. She and I cosplayed it together, watched episodes together, and got merchandise together. You know, the whole kit kabuti, and through even though she was always able to get more stuff than I was because she actually had a job. At some point, she actually bought a DVD bootleg of Hetalia so we could watch it anytime. A picture of it provided me here thanks to my mother letting me her camera for a second before she headed off to sold it off to the next week. Of course, all the episodes just being ripped off from the internet sites had them subbed. I watched the first one or two episodes with her, but I really was incontent with watching them online, so I left her to it. About 2 or 3 days after she got the DVD, she acted really weird, is the best way I can describe it. In a drop of a hat, she dropped the whole Hetalia series, setting it aside with her merchandise and shelving along with Hetalia cosplays. Even selling some. When I tried to ask her about what was up, she just said that she didn't want to talk about it, to the point that if she'd given it at me if I had mentioned it to her. I was extremely disappointed at losing my sister when it comes to sibling bonding in the fandom. At the time, just figuring she grew out of it, I found something better to do. That mindset especially fit for when she started to read Homestruck soon after to do something to do. Now there is something that got weirder. Now it's been a while since then, probably like a month or so. I'm not sure why. Probably a phone call from my best friend. I got the urge to watch some episodes with just a classic good old Italy. Through currently, the internet was being worked on by my father since he was changing the phone providers and all that was a mess. So I decided to look for that Hetalia DVD that my sister had. It took me a long while, but I found it at the back of the DVD cabinet. Not sure exactly why she shoved it back there. Well, at the time, the bootleg hadn't really been bad, really. It had been a fan art out of someone as a child's chibi be around the world, along with the little title on top. For some reason, the disc just printed on the fan art. I popped the DVD player into my room and decided to look through the episodes just to find a really fun one, maybe one of Romano first introduced. As I went through the episode choice option, though, I found something really weird in between the episode 23 and 24. For those who don't know, it's Liechtenstein's and Switzerland episodes. The very cute indeed, and the 24th has the conclusion of Axis on the island arc thing. But there was another square choice, like the episode, but there really wasn't a title next to it, saying what number or what it actually the episode was about. For it wasn't untitled that caught my interest. But the screenshot of it was Italy, smiling. Looking upwards with a content gaze, his eyes actually opened, mind you, with glistening eyes and what looked like sand, like perhaps he was lying in it. This blew my freaking mind, and this was something I knew. I craved for new things in the fandom as always. Perhaps that this is a hidden chapter I wasn't aware of, like a bonus episode. I bit my lip and trembled at the excitement, and I knew that I had all this to myself. Wait until my friends heard about this. I was going to be getting more knowledgeable than anyone else, of course. When I look back, I wish I wouldn't have found it. Without much ado, I clicked on the select episode with my remote to watch it. The little animation appeared as always, with the large orchestra blaring out for a few seconds to show the Japanese caricatura of Hetalia with Axis powers next to it. Soon after it shifted to the view of the island that Axis was stranded on. Japan and Germany sitting next to the shade of the tree, while Italy just laid in the sand, soaking up sun with that cute dumb look on his face. Now before I go on, I've read stories like this before of lost episodes of cartoons, stories that I didn't believe until now, honestly. And I know how they went off, about something extremely bad quality, but this quality wasn't too bad. Sure, it wasn't the best quality, but it was still quite pixelated from being ripped off of a site. Then it burned onto a disc, but it was okay. The sound of it was a tad bit muffled. Nothing too out of the ordinary, of course. This just kind of made it creepier with what was able to be seen better. But I'll get to that in a little bit. Back to the episode. While Italy was sunbathing, his jacket and his shorts, the camera then cuts over to Germany and Japan. Although they both look a tad bit upset, if not worried. Then they started to speak. Two things came off as one, there was out no subtitles, and I had zero idea what they were talking about. And two of their voices were actually those who voiced in the same series. I was extremely impressed of the raw footage, although I was a bit muffled as to why there was no subs. Well, as long as Hiroki Yasumoto, Germany's Nisisku, keep talking, I was all happy all the way. The two seemed to be chatting about something serious. Germany clutches his stomach from time to time in pain, and Japan would not nod and let out a hand on his stomach as well. My guess is that they had run out of steady food and item and they were starving. That was kind of a downer for the episode to go on, but it was only the beginning of there that was probably a fun way to get food later. Just then, Italy had called out, having two of them to look up to nowhere whichever was, which is now currently running around in the ocean. He waved to them and the two of them waved back unfiniscally before they went back to just playing in the sun and water. I didn't notice until then, but the only thing playing in the background was the ocean's waves. Something not common, but it was certainly something to keep the atmosphere into some kind of stoic. Now, especially with the focus that was onto the hungry and worried nations in the shade, but either way, I was too sucked up in just the beautiful new material, and I didn't question it. I didn't even care that I didn't know the bulk of it. I mostly cared about the actions anyway. The nations were quiet for a while before Japan had seemed to ask something, and Germany looked to him in shock, almost exclaiming before quietly hushed over to the island nation, making him whisper in the line instead. Oh, what was Japan thinking, I thought? But Japan had repeated the Japanese statement in a more quieter and clearer tone, not taking his eyes off of Italy in the water. For a few moments the two of them discussed the issue, obviously talking about the Italian, though soon enough, two of them nodded in agreement. At that moment, even though it was just for a few seconds, Germany had made the saddest face I've ever seen. He could just burst out in tears at any moment, but kept it back. Honestly, I awkwardly flipped at my shit at such emotion. Even though it was short, though it made me wonder even more what brought it on. Then the scene then changed to nighttime, 3 months huddled around the fire for warmth. Although they seemed to be less content with their jackets on as usual. Italy was fast asleep next to it, sleeping contentedly while leaving the other two nations to their thoughts. Still, the only sounds of the ocean crashing against the shore was only heard in the background, as the two were silent. Although soon enough, the camera panned out to over them, giving each other a subtle nod. In illusion, the two stood up, going over to Italy and picking them up very carefully. Not wanting to wake them up at this point, I was extremely confused. What they were planning to do with him? Were they going to have a new location? Quietly, they shuffled the sleeping nation over to the ocean and carefully set him in face down. Japan was setting his hands over the others just to keep it still below the water's surface. It didn't take long until Italy began to thrash around, bubbles popping furiously onto the water next to his head, only having Japan press down harder while Germany was looking away with his eyes closed and his lip being bitten onto hard. While this was going on, my mouth was hanging ajar. Japan and Germany were drowning. Italy? Why? Just as I was watched this instantly, I recognized the words something coming from Japan. I'm sorry, Italy. What the hell? Just about 15 seconds later, which felt like almost forever, of watching the poor nation, Italy's limbs fell in a plop in the water. The bubbles were creasing to rise anymore. The deed was done. But why? Japan had picked up Germany and waterlogged Italy and brought it back to a shore, placing them down next to the fire while Germany sat aside, just staring at the fire as if contemplating what they just did. Japan then unsheathed his sword, kneeled down next to the corpse, taking off his own jacket and setting it aside. With one more look to the blonde before back down, Japan took a deep breath before making an incision from the base of the neck all the way down to his navel, cutting a bit more as he was able to flip the skin back to reveal the organs, the once living nation. At this, I had to pause the episode, feeling quite lightheaded at this. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, I read and looked at gory stuff, but seeing this down Studio Dean style and done in official voices, or if it's fake, it's a really good artist with a very good sound likes, but it was just way too surreal for me. While I had the TV paused, I had a good chance to look at the Italy's insides. God, it sounds so weird as I type this, and they just look so real. Not only they were hyper-cammed, but as if the artist had done the inside atometry of the person for hours, drawing every little curve to make it realistic. I wanted to stop watching, but I just had to turn it off and abandon that TV with the DVD inside. But I was already too far into it. I had to at least see through this to the end, and it would haunt me for the rest of my life. If I stopped here, after taking a short breather and drinking some water, I pressed play on my remote to resume the madness. I instantly was greeted by a slurp sound of Japan, sliding his hand into Italy's body and pulling out one of the organs in piece. It was looking like a liver, for with it so detailed it was hard to not mistake it. Japan sighed as he cut the connecting strand with his sword and the mess of the organs onto the others, discarded the jacket before going back and setting aside. While Japan searched around, Germany reached over and sharpened some sticks, which seemed to have gathered earlier, and penetrated the sharp end through each organ that Japan had laid out. With the sad inside, he let out the organ kebabs on a range and the fire so it can get cooked. I honestly don't know how this was even possible. Once more, seemingly long period of time, Germany pulled out the now cooked meals from the fire while holding Japan, who accepted it, his arms still blood smeared. Both of them were silenced before Japan murmured something and took a bite. It honestly still makes me weird when I think about seeing that scene, but the lightheadedness faded as I heard something that made me gasp. The both of them were turned in shock, and the camera was panning over for it to now show that Italy was awake. What? How was he even awake? They drowned him. Or was he just unconscious? Well, I wasn't even sure what was going on, and it seemed like the other two had no idea either. Germany and Japan tried to explain themselves, but Italy grew more panicked slowly getting what was happening, and he began to scream in pain and fear and sadness. I couldn't even pinpoint the emotion here, but it was too weird to hear him like that part. It almost sounded like a man voicing him was in large amount of pain himself. Germany and Japan went over him, trying to get him to be quiet, though after a large confusion of everyone yelling at once. Germany was the one to scream for everyone to be quiet, shaking Italy to try to make him quiet, resulting in just tugging him to a curl to make him stop momentarily. At this point, when I should have laughed, I was practically at the point of tears. Germany talked, trying to appear strong and try to explain the situation. My guess is the situation was that there was no food left and they were going to eat Italy, since he was the weakness. Though he was a nation, right? They were all nations, but why would they have to resort to that? Was that when Italy woke up? Germany, comforting Italy while being harvested, said, "Soon enough." Enough. Italy just gave an understanding nod, whimpering in fear and pain as well. He sputtered out something, pausing it to a point to cough, blood drooling down his chin. Now it was Japan's turn to talk, seemingly to try to comfort him in a smoothing tone. But after this small speech, Italy nodded once more before looking down, seeing that Germany was gripping his hand tightly, with another nod from the German and Japanese nation. Japan went back over and scooped his hand into somewhat in a functioning body, pulling and cutting out his spleen and setting it aside. Italy almost screamed and reduced to a sort of mixture of whimpering and sobbing. The camera cut to the view of his and Germany's hands, becoming more constructed against each other. The shot then panned up to the frowning Germany, who glanced over at Japan's work before speaking again, calling Italy's attention. He spoke in a bit, trying to smile, and as soon as Italy smiled back at him, for once in the series actually opening his eyes to reveal their golden honey-colored, and called him the familiar word that he called him, the captain. Then there was a time skip soon, and a large portion of his organs were laying by Italy's jacket. The things I could recognize being a lot of body parts, particularly everything but the brain, lungs, and heart. Japan then wiped out his arm and his forehead, smearing the blood accidentally before impaling them on sticks and near the fire. He turned back to Germany, who was still holding Italy's hand, cradled over to get a closer look. Italy had seemed to pass on again, his eyes lightening, glistening, and staring blankly upwards with a small smile on his face. Italy was smiling even to death. This shot was shown in the menu. Japan seemed to look up at Germany, seeing that he was frowning, his blue eyes glistening with tears. He did still try to get over what this was happening to him. Japan had laid his hand on his shoulder, murmuring something seemingly comforting, making Germany nod in agreement and high shakily. Japan then frowned lightly, as this beforehand moved aside, grabbing the dead Italian's free hand and squeezing it tight lightly, saying something to Germany before looking into the fire. Germany glanced back in the fire for a moment, before he looked at the sky that Italy was staring. The camera was panning upwards towards it, to pass the stars until everything was completely black. And then the next episode started playing, just like that, no credits or anything. It just left the episode on a cryptic and optimistic note. I have no idea. I wish I could have just run it on my computer just to get some screenshots, but the disc refuses to play on here for some reason, and I don't really have a good camera to snap a clear picture. My friend Faye was kind enough to get at least 2 screenshots for me, though the disc only worked on her computer for so long. But I'd rather not look at that again. It may sound bad when you read this, but it made me get away from Hetalia for at least a while, honestly. Although I'm not this weak to stomach as my sister. I still love the series and still will continue to love it. But since then, I refuse to watch any anime episodes. I would prefer to see some fan-made gore over official ones anytime. And that, my little pretties, was Access Powers Hetalia episode 23.5. a Access Powers Hetalia Lost Episode creepypasta written by Kyokyo866. My final thoughts on this story. Okay, I remember Mr. Creepypasta hearing Mr. Creepypasta's narration of this story, I think maybe last year or something. And I was kind of considering in narrating this story, but I decided to, kind of hold back off on that for at least a little bit until now. So, yeah, I decided to go ahead and, give this a read now. So, this one I remember seeing was from the Scare Factor Creepypasta Phantom Wiki. I got this from the Creepypasta Land Wiki. I decided to read that story from there. So, yeah, I honestly have to say this story had a lot of shocking and crazy stuff happening. And there are some good reasons as to why that's the case. Like the subject matter of it, when Italy was being eaten, I mean, yeah, there were some messed up and disturbing things that were described in this story. But besides that, I found this to be a rather good and enjoyable creepypasta. Like, I actually looked at this story a few times and it's beautifully well made, especially with the whole concept of, what this episode means, with Germany, Japan, and Italy, are in this island and they're stranded. I mean, it's a pretty good episode concept for what this story really is. I do like how there's so much time and effort into the grammar on making it good, as well as the sentence structuring and everything out. It's just flat out a really good anime lost episode creepypasta. Like, I'm not gonna lie, there are some anime creepypastas that are kind of hard to write nowadays, but I know there are some out there that manage to put their time and effort into the story, and this is definitely one of them that actually manages to sit there and do this good. But I can also visualize, everything that is going on in this story. Like I can honestly visualize, what did if this were to be a real episode, because this is not out of the ordinary for anime to do something like this. When it comes to Japanese anime, they do a lot of different things and crazy things too, if you ask me. Like I've seen some anime, movies and cartoons that got bloody and gory, really messed up and all that. But I mean, I'm used to seeing that stuff. Like, I mean, I have seen worse, so yeah. I'm sure most of us have seen, stuff like this, like that. But I can honestly see this episode being a realistic episode in a kind of way. Yeah, I mean, it's not hyperrealistic blood really much. Well, there's realistic organs, but at least it's done in a way to make it believable. Not sit there and just throw in hyperrealistic organs or gore and all that like in most Lost episode pastas do. This one manages to do it a lot good and a lot better than other creepypastas can do. I mean, yes, there's other creepypastas that can do hyperrealistic really good, depending on if how the author manages to put it as long as they are knowing what they're doing. But despite the fact that there were a couple of cliches in the story, this story manages to make it as believable and very interesting with the concept and the storyline to play out beautifully. Like, I've only seen maybe an episode or two of this show, but I think I should really watch it because I have no idea what this show is about because I've never seen it personally. But if you have seen this show and you want to give out your thoughts on it, feel free to do so in the comments below because I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on this story. But I would have to say right here, right now, I do like the fact that I believe there were some screenshots in this story that I've read from the wiki itself. I mean, it does look realistic in a sense. I mean, it does have a really great concept for what this one is, as well as the good concept of this story of its own self. So yeah, I mean, I really do like how the author manages to put his or her time and effort into this story, so that's flat out amazing. So, yeah. Anyways, with that being said, with that being the case, I'm gonna sit here and say this right now. It's a pretty good story. I mean, I recommend reading this story if you wanna sit there and find a good anime lost episode pasta. This is definitely one you should check out. Anyways, with that being said, with that being the case, like I'm gonna say, this is simply my own personal opinion, And if you happen to disagree with me, that's fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions in regards to these creepypastas, and this is simply my own personal thoughts. My final rating of this story would have to be a I'm gonna give this one a 10 out of 10. It's a flat out perfect, well made creepypasta. I mean, it's definitely one of the fewer lost episode creepypastas that manages to sit there and put time and effort into the story and manages to incorporate cliches very well to make it believable in a sense and not sit there and throw the cliches in there for the sake of throwing it in there. Not like most lost episode pastas do that I've seen. So, anyways, I guess with that being said, what did you guys personally think of this creepypasta? Did you all enjoy it? Did you all not? Also, what we have done personally to help make this story a lot better? Feel free to let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. I'm the Queen of Lions. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. And if you're new to this channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because I make brand new videos every single day. Don't forget to ring the notification bell when I upload, so that way you guys will not miss an upload. And as always, please roll the outro because I'm out.